What are the Razak and the Lethrblaka? What kind of creatures are they? What are they like and how do they behave? Today, on this episode of the Inheritance Cycle Analyzed, we delve into the history of these creatures and measure their impact on the story. Hello everyone, this is SaberX, and in this video we will be covering the characters, creatures, and plots of books and films such as the Primitive War franchise, the Inheritance Cycle, and so much more. So, without further ado, welcome, one and all. First and foremost, it must be said that the Razak and the Lethrblaka are both the same species. The Lethrblaka represent the adult stage of the Razak. Likewise, the Razak are referred to growth-wise as pupae. While this term is generally used for insects, the Razak do not belong to this class of animals. In fact, they don't belong to any known class of animal, according to Oramus, the last elder of the Dragon Riders as of the events of the Inheritance Cycle. Through studies made by his order and by other researchers in Alagaesia, it is also determined that the Lethrblaka and Razak also do not belong to any order or family of fish, bird, reptile, amphibian, mammal, dragon, or any other class of known animal. He even states that they are not plants either when jokingly asked this by Eragon's Shadeslayer during their studies, suggesting that they do not belong to any known class of organism currently understood by scientists or magicians. This can lead one to wonder just what exactly they are. Perhaps they are an entirely new class of animal, or perhaps some form of demon, or maybe they are creatures from an older time from before human history. Whatever the case, they are bizarre and foul, and their biology only seems to reinforce this point. The larval form, the Razak, has a vaguely humanoid black exoskeleton, more like an insect carapace than anything else. Like any human or other humanoid creature in the inheritance cycle, such as dwarves, urgals, or elves, the Razak could easily wield swords, daggers, and other weapons because of their five-fingered hands. Their limbs are thin, but the muscles beneath give them incredible strength. Their waist is thinner than any human's, and their exoskeleton gives off the illusion of their ribs being on the outside of their body. As we also learn in the book Inheritance, they also have an extra, backwards-facing joint on their hind legs below the knee, which gives them a very unsettling walking gait. Their backs are hunched, a result of the adult body and anatomy growing beneath the armored shell. But their face and eyes are what really set them apart and give them a terrifying appearance above everything else. The Razak have heads of a vaguely humanoid nature and proportions, but in place of the face a human would have, they have large, lidless black eyes the size of a human fist, and a sharp beak. Inside the beak is a barbed purple tongue, probably used for scooping marrow out of bones. This brings us to why the Razak are shaped as they are. This vaguely humanoid appearance allows them to get close enough to humans that they can attack them, for humans are their natural prey. Their breath has a paralyzing quality to it, immobilizing their victims long enough that they can get close enough to kill them or capture them. Humans are the most greatly affected by Razak's breaths, though dwarves are less susceptible and elves are immune altogether. The Razak are cunning and can speak the language of humans, though they are considered narrow-minded. It takes 20 years for them to reach maturity, at which point, on the first full moon of their 20th year, they molt their exoskeleton and spread their wings for the first time, turning into their adult form. By comparison, the adults, the Lethrblaka, in many ways vaguely resemble a dragon, or more accurately, a pterosaur. In particular, they seem to most closely resemble Ashdarchid pterosaurs such as Quetzalcoatlus. Unlike their offspring, their skin is soft and delicate, resembling the skin of newborn mice and rats. It is likewise dark in color, and their front legs are generally heavily muscled along with their hind legs, and their feet are tipped with huge talons. They also have immense wings, which are large and bat-like. Their waists are thin, giving the appearance of starving dogs, and their tails are also long and rat-like. Like their offspring, the Lethrblaka have black eyes that are quite large in size and are lidless. Their beaks, however, are much longer than those of their pupae, measuring a full 7 feet long, and are razor-sharp and toothless. We also learn that they have a distinct foul smell that is enough to make the unprepared come close to vomiting. It isn't known whether they can speak the language of humans like their offspring, but it is possible. Likewise, they can screech loud enough to shatter panes of glass. Additionally, where their offspring are considered narrow-minded and cunning, Lethrblaka are just as intelligent as any dragon, albeit a twisted and evil one. As a result, they are extremely dangerous not just to humans, but to all creatures. Interestingly enough, any weapon wielded by these creatures, whether juvenile or adult, including their beaks and claws, produce wounds that are slow to heal unless repaired with magic. In regards to their strength, Razak and Lethrblaka alike were powerful creatures. A Razak was many times stronger than a normal human of comparable size. Such was their power that it took a fully trained dragon rider or a dragon to kill one. They could track a scent better than a bloodhound, see on a cloudy night with little effort, and could run faster and were more agile than the humans they hunted. They also, perhaps either by their nature or perhaps because their minds were so alien to anyone else, could not be sensed or tracked with magic. This also meant that it would be very difficult to find them under any circumstance. However, they were not without weaknesses. Both the adults and pupae were weakened by bright light, as it was painful to them due to their nocturnal vision, and neither Razak nor Lethrblaka could swim. As a result, they avoided deep water whenever possible due to their risk of drowning, to the extreme that they would fly no more than a meter from shore. They also could not use magic. They could be protected by it if someone placed wards around them, but they could not use it themselves, and they were vulnerable to its effects. Some spells were particularly effective against them, notably those that could be used to blind them. In regards to their history, little is known of the origins of the Lethrblaka and the Razak. What is known is that they probably come from whatever lands humans originally hailed from. In fact, it is suggested by Oramus that their depredations may have been what forced King Palancar, the first human king to settle in the land of Alagaesia, to abandon his homeland in the first place. Whatever the case, the dragon riders intervened when they discovered them in the land. In what could be described as a well-justified genocide, the Lethrblaka and Razak were exterminated, as the elves would exterminate leaf blight. Only 2 Lethrblaka would escape this genocide, nesting in caves on the peaks of the mountain Helgrind, where they would raise their offspring, one male and the other female. The Lethrblaka and Razak were eventually sought out by King Galbatorix after he eliminated the Dragon Riders with help from the 13 Forsworn, his most loyal followers. Brokering a deal with them, he offered them his protection and an endless supply of human flesh as food in exchange for their service and swearing fealty to him. The Lethrblaka and Razak accepted, becoming essentially the king's personal dragon hunters, investigating any rumors of surviving dragons on his behalf and assassinating anyone who might be working against him. This they did using a darkly enchanted acidic sather oil, a particularly nasty means of killing their enemies, as the oil only ate through human flesh and bone and nothing else. They continued nesting in the extensive caves in the mountain of Helgrind throughout his reign. Eventually, the king would use them to hunt for the dragon Saphira's egg after it was stolen by his enemies, the Varden, and transported out of his servant Durza's grasp in a failed attempt by the Shade to get it back when he captured its courier, Arya Dratningu, in the beginning of the events of Eragon, with the king sending the Razak to Carvahal in Palancar Valley where he believed the egg might be near. When the Razak investigated, the local butcher, Sloan Alden's son, informed them of the egg, which he thought to be a stone, and the person who found it, Eragon, the local farm boy and hunter. Investigating his farm, the Razak tortured Eragon's uncle, Garrow. Eragon was absent, having been spirited away by Saphira when he warned her of them, thus saving them from being captured. When they found no pertinent information relating to Eragon or his location, the Razak left with their parents, the Lethrblaka, destroying Garrow's farm. Garrow would later die from the torture they inflicted on him, a result of the Seither oil they used. Eragon swore revenge and decided with Saphira to go after them, joined by Brahm, the local storyteller, in secret the founder of the Varden and a former dragon rider. Brahm himself had previously run into the Razak, as they were not only searching for Saphira's egg, but also him. As a result, Brahm felt duly responsible for the death of Garrow. To that end, he swore to amend this wrong by teaching Eragon the ins and outs of becoming a dragon rider and training him so that they could face the Razak and kill them. After following their trail for quite some time through Galbatorix's empire, they eventually learned that the Razak were in Drasleona, which they discovered by tracking the shipments of Seither oil they used, where the creatures set up an ambush. They cornered Eragon when he entered the Church of the Priests of Helgrind during his investigation into their whereabouts. Though Eragon managed to get away, the Razak pursued the boy, eventually ambushing him, Brahm, and Saphira outside the city after their escape. They planned to kill Brahm before taking Eragon and Saphira to the king, as Brahm had given them much grief over the years. When they also discovered Eragon had the sword Zarok in his possession, the Razak were alarmed, as they had known that blade and its master, Morzan, the first and most loyal of the Forsworn. As they prepared to kill Brahm, the Razak were ambushed in turn by Murtag, Morzan's own son, who had been hunting them just as Eragon had. Taken by surprise, they fled, but not before throwing a dagger at Eragon. Brahm sacrificed himself for Eragon, taking the hit. Thus the Razak had their revenge, even if their mission had failed. Brahm would die of his wounds shortly after, but not before directing Eragon to the Varden, revealing his nature as a former rider, and giving him his blessings. Despite their failure, the Razak were able to, along with Durza, describe Eragon to Galbatorix and where he had come from, and thus the king gave them a new mission: to seek out, capture, and interrogate his remaining family member, his cousin, Roran. Thus, they returned to Carvajal some months later during the events of Eldest. At first, Roran hid from them, safely tucked away in a sheltered spot in the mountains of the Spine. However, Roran returned when he found out that the Razak had devoured one of his friends, a man named Quimby, who had accidentally been killed in a bar fight with one of the soldiers accompanying the foul creatures. The monsters had returned only his bones after collecting his body, which had all been cracked open for the marrow after devouring his remains. As a result of this desecration and the fact that the soldiers continued to threaten them, Roran led the people of Carvajal to drive them away. As a result, a battle occurred in which the people of Carvajal initially drove the soldiers off. However, due to the danger the soldiers and the Razak posed, Roran suggested that they hide all the women and children in the village in the Spine, where they would be safe from the attacking soldiers. However, Sloan would hear nothing of it, as he had become deathly afraid of the mountains after his wife Esmira had accidentally perished when she had tumbled over Igualda Falls near Carvajal. To that end, Sloan betrayed the village, killing fellow villager Bird and alerting the Razak to Roran's location in exchange for the safety of himself and his daughter Katrina, whom he had selfishly tried to keep away from Roran, who had proposed to Katrina out of pride and madness. Later that night, when Sloane had killed Bird, Roran was attacked by the Razak, who kidnapped Katrina and left Roran with a grievous shoulder wound from their beaks. The Razak then retreated, knocking out Sloane, killing a soldier that questioned their orders so they could eat, and then retreated on their parents' backs. As a result of these events, Roran realized their situation was untenable, and convinced the vast majority of the village to leave, causing them to cross the spine with him, though they suffered many casualties along the way due to severe weather and wild animals. Only a few villagers from Carvajal remained, either out of stubbornness or to hold off the soldiers long enough for everyone else to escape. The Razak and Lethrblaka continued their chase, trying to flush the soldiers out, even to the point of causing a stampede of deer that tried to escape the foul creatures. But eventually, the people of Carvajal made their way to the city of Tirm, where they managed to commandeer the ship known as the Dragon Wing with the help of Jode, a scholar, merchant, and agent of the Varden. It was only after the Dragon Wing was stolen that one of the Razak and the Lethrblaka reappeared. Due to their fear of water, they refused to fly over the ocean, a fact that Roran noticed and was able to exploit, lightly wounding the Lethrblaka and driving it away with a single arrow. Both pairs of Razak and Lethrblaka retreated back to their lair, where they kept Sloane and Katrina captive, while Roran reunited with Eragon and met Saphira. The Razak's plan was to hold Katrina hostage as a bargaining chip, as a means of potentially manipulating Roran into surrendering, or worse yet, to force him to convince Eragon and Saphira to surrender to them and to Galbatorix. The Razak tortured Sloane for information on Eragon and ate his eyes, but otherwise left the butcher alive. Katrina was largely unharmed by comparison due to her value as a hostage. Eventually, Roran would return to face the Razak, this time with Eragon and Saphira to back him up, and this time the Razak and Lethrblaka were overwhelmed, though it was a difficult battle to say the least. Eragon eventually blinded them with bright light, and Roran killed the shorter of the two Razak, while Saphira killed both Lethrblaka, though they did score several wounds on her with their sharp beaks. Katrina was also rescued, but Sloane was left behind, as Eragon lied to Roran and Katrina in order to figure out a means of properly punishing the butcher without Katrina suffering the indignity of having to watch her father be executed for murder. The final Razak would be killed by Eragon, who interrogated the taller Razak for information. Despite his magical oaths to Galbatorix, the Razak tried to make a pact with the young dragon rider, wishing to be remembered as Fear when his kind was driven into extinction. The tall Razak was able to give hints at what Galbatorix was up to, though he could not say very much due to the extent of his oaths. When Eragon found this information too vague, he decided it was not enough to agree to that deal. The Razak cursed him, wishing that he would leave Alagaesia and never return, something the young dragon rider shuddered at the thought of. Eragon swiftly killed his opponent in that moment when the Razak tried for a final surprise attack, and thus the Razak and the Lethrblaka were destroyed. Eragon would escape the mountain and its cavern shortly after, with Sloane being carried unconscious on his back. When Galbatorix learned of the death of the Razak and the Lethrblaka, he was so angry that he tortured Eragon's half-brother, Murtagh, and his dragon Thorn in outrage. Or so it was thought. In inheritance, it was later revealed that at least 2 Razak eggs were given to the priests of Helgrind by Galbatorix. What he did not know, however, was that the priests worshipped these monsters as gods and wished to see both the end of the king and the dragon riders as a whole so that the Razak and Lethrblaka could roam and feed as they wished. When Eragon and Arya were captured by the priests of Helgrind, Eragon learned this from their high priest and was witness to the hatching of one of the eggs, which they had been given to as a sacrifice. Had it not been for the witch Angela and her werecat companion Solumbum, they might have been eaten alive. Eragon destroyed the other egg after being freed by Angela. During their final confrontation against Galbatorix, Eragon also learned that the king had saved and hidden many Razak eggs, stating that they would always be around to serve him. After the king was killed, Eragon went searching for these eggs with Saphira, but found nothing save for old books pertaining to the threat they posed. He would not have the sufficient time to look more thoroughly, as he would leave Alagaesia shortly afterwards in order to found the Dragon Rider Academy and find a safe place for a new generation of dragons to hatch. There is also a legend told to Eragon later in The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm by an Urgal bard about a dragon named Vermund and the pair of Lethrblaka he faces in battle. However, it is unlikely that these particular individual Lethrblaka were real, especially since Lethrblaka and dragons weren't native to the Urgal's original homeland. During the events of the book Murtagh, however, it is discovered that at least one more egg from a Razak survived. Murtagh would later report this egg to the werecat Carabel, who had given him a mission to find and rescue her daughter, Silna, from the cult of the Duel Dromar, also known as the Dreamers. Carabel promised to destroy the egg on Murtagh's behalf after he returned her daughter to her. What became of the egg is unknown, and whether or not it may play a role in the sequel to Murtagh isn't known either. Nevertheless, the egg might have been gathered as a weapon for the cult, who would have used it to cause chaos by unleashing a Razak on the unsuspecting populace of the Broadring Empire. So, what does this tell us about the Razak and Lethrblaka? Well, for starters, we understand that they are cruel and dangerous creatures. They are sadistic and quite cunning. When they know they are being hunted, they keep to the shadows until they can ambush their intended targets or anyone who hunts them. As they come from a race of creature that regularly hunts humans, we also understand that they are predatory. The worst part of it is that they are predatory not only in a manner that is bespeaking of an apex predator, but one that regularly enjoys killing and eating humans as its preferred food source. Given that both humans and the Razak and Lethrblaka are sentient species, this is particularly twisted and evil, suggesting that the race saw humans as nothing but food and perhaps as an inferior species. That the adolescent form of these creatures vaguely mimics humans makes it even more terrifying. As Oramus states in Eldest, they are the monsters in the dark, the dripping nightmares that haunt your race. Given that they are also not native to Alagaesia, it could easily be said that they are technically an invasive species, one that has been driven to near extinction due to their detrimental impact. They were also not hesitant about taking hostages and had no qualms about desecration, such as when they ate the body of Quimby or eating their own men when they were given command over a force of soldiers. That Galbatorix valued them likewise showed just how cruel and sadistic he was in turn, as such openly vicious creatures aligning themselves with him and swearing fealty to him was essentially perverse. That they were willing to torture anyone they captured was also proof of their sadism. Another excellent example of this was when they decided to disobey certain orders in favor of their own pleasure. When they captured Eragon, they decided to kill Brahm in spite of the king's orders because of how much of a problem he had been for them. When they considered whether or not Eragon would inform the king of what they had done, they both agreed that he would not dare to tell the truth because they would terrorize him into submission if he tried. In many respects, the Razak and Lethrblaka bear many similarities to the 9 Nazgul from The Lord of the Rings, even down to the fact that the Razak themselves wore hooded cloaks to hide their true appearances. The fact that they also used their breath to incapacitate opponents is also very similar to the black breath of Tolkien's Nazgul. Likewise, the Lethrblaka could be comparable to the fell beasts in The Lord of the Rings, serving as steeds for their offspring, just as the fell beasts served as steeds to the Nazgul. The similarities don't end there, as both were known for screaming and making inhuman noises due to the fact that they were supernatural creatures. Additionally, they also had some similarities with certain villains from other series, such as the Sith Lords from Star Wars and to dangerous warriors in real life. Like the Sith, there was only one pair of Razak and one pair of Lethrblaka. Also, like with the Sith, this allowed them to hide largely in plain sight for the most part, only drawn out of the shadows when needed by their master. In many ways, they also resemble stereotypes of classic medieval spies and assassins, including the medieval assassin Rashid ad-Din Sinan, also known as the Old Man of the Mountain, and an enemy of the famous Salah ad-Din, albeit supernatural ones, lying in wait until just the right moment to strike, and often luring those who hunt them into ambushes and fights that are arguably in the favor of the assassins in question. Whatever the case, the Razak and Lethrblaka are most certainly memorable, and I look forward to seeing if they reappear again in the next books regarding Alagaesia. And so we come to the end of our analysis of the Razak and Lethrblaka. I hope you have truly enjoyed this video because I have enjoyed making it for you to watch and listen to. If you would like to see more and listen to more content like this, please give this channel a like and remember to comment and subscribe. Every bit of appreciation helps out the channel. As always, thank you for watching.